welcome back to the Referral Mastery course. This is session 9. Before we get into today's session, as usual, I want to have a look at the apple tree, make sure that you've got your apple tree up to date. And also, why I do this little recap of the apple tree is I want you seeing the big picture, because just remember, I'm not teaching you a bunch of disparate, disconnected techniques. I'm teaching you one holistic system that all works together. So your apple tree should look a bit like this. Up until this point, you have built, sorted, captured, and then phoned through and primed a database of, I'm saying to you, between 100 and 300 advocates, and then everybody else goes on a B list. We've looked at a couple of the dialogues so far. The database primer dialogue is the one that you used when you did the priming. And then the database filter dialogue is a similar dialogue that you're using to add people to your database as you're out and about and you're meeting new people. Oh, by the way, if you were buying or selling your home, you had a friend or a family member who was, do you have an agent you'd refer them to? If they say no, great, I'd love to keep in touch with you. I've got a program that I run. Then we've looked at a number of the written communication techniques. We started by looking at handwritten notes. We then looked at items of value, and at the same time we looked at your email newsletter and how to set up an email newsletter. We looked at the introduction and the guild pledge letters, and we also looked at drip campaigns when you're meeting people and you're adding them to the database. So we've covered a lot of ground so far. If you need to, you're obviously well able to go back to the previous sessions and catch up. Today in session 9, I want to talk about responding to referrals. Because, and the reason we stop the conversation at this point before we carry on with the written communication, is because you're going to be picking up referrals. If you're doing what I'm telling you to do, odds are very high that you've already actually got a referral from one of the database primer phone calls, for example. Now, I want to address today, what do you do when you receive a referral? Because there's a few little techniques, there's a few mistakes, terrible mistakes you can make, and there's also a few little techniques you can use to get those referrals to multiply, to lead to more referrals. So that's where we're going today. You have two main tasks after receiving a referral. The first one is to teach people how to refer you. Teach people how to refer you. And then the second one is to reward them for referring you. And we're going to pick up the conversation with the first one now, teaching people how to refer you. Here's the principle. Once you have received a lead via referral, making contact and getting an appointment as soon as possible is all that counts. Speed to lead and getting an appointment. You must be obsessed with getting face-to-face appointments with your leads as quickly as possible. I'm going to read you a little quote that brings this out nicely. According to the NAR's 2023 Profile of Home Buyers and Sellers report, 82% of sellers and 73% of buyers contacted only one agent before choosing who to work with. That is, just stop and think about that. They only contact one agent. This reinforces the idea that getting the first meeting is critical, as most sellers do not interview multiple agents before deciding. Additionally, a significant portion of those sellers, 90% of them, reported being satisfied with their agents, suggesting that once a seller commits to an agent, they are unlikely to switch quickly. This idea is also backed by real estate experts who emphasize the importance of getting in front of the lead first. Top performing agents and trainers often stress, as I am doing in this course, that the competitive edge is more about contacting and meeting with the lead early than delivering a flawless listing presentation later. This means the first agent to secure an appointment often has a significant advantage. The importance of acting quickly to get the initial meeting cannot be overstated. And then a little quote from Jennifer from the NAR. The early bird gets the worm. Find ways to increase your response time to prospects and connect with them as soon as possible. And let me just say it one more time. Getting an appointment as soon as possible, a face-to-face appointment when you've got a referral or any kind of lead, is more important than having the slickest listing presentation, for example. The battle is actually won by getting the appointment first. You can have a very average listing presentation, and what the studies are showing us is that if you get in first, unless you completely muck it up, you are more than likely going to get the mandate. Okay, so I want to introduce you to 3 fantastic people, and we're going to use these to illustrate the point of what to do when we get a referral. The first person we're going to meet is Mrs. Edwards. You do not know Mrs. Edwards. You don't even know Mrs. Edwards exists, but she is a potential seller. She's thinking of selling her home. Then there is another gentleman. His name is Mr. Jones. Now, Mr. Jones is an advocate. He's been an advocate on your Trusted Advisor program for the last 2 years. And every time you've spoken to Mr. Jones, and as you're going to see, you're going to have personal contact with Mr. Jones, every 6 weeks, you're going to either have a phone call or a face-to-face pop-by with Mr. Jones. You're going to be saying to him, "Oh, by the way, Mr. Jones, if you know anyone thinking of buying or selling their home who would appreciate the level of service I provide, please call me with their details, and I promise to look after anybody you refer to me." Okay? So he's been hearing that every 6 weeks for 2 years, and as I'm sure you can tell from my slide, you are in luck because Mr. Jones plays tennis with Mrs. Edwards every Tuesday evening. Then the third person we need to meet in our scenario here is you. Now, it must be said that of the 3, you look the worst. You've lost all your hair from the stress, and you're on your phone. But things are looking up because Mr. Jones is about to give you a referral. So Mr. Jones and Mrs. Edwards are playing tennis on a Tuesday evening, and Mrs. Edwards, just as Mr. Jones is about to serve the ball, she says, "Oh, I'm thinking of selling my house." And Mr. Jones has the most unearthly experience. He's just tossed the ball up, he's about to hit it, and he hears as if from heaven, "Oh, by the way, Mr. Jones," and he completely misses the ball. Now, the reason I do it that way is because I want you to get the point I'm making. Mr. Jones has reached what we call critical mass. You've got him to the point where when he hears the word home, buy, sell, real estate, property, house, he involuntarily thinks of you because you have repeatedly used what we call the harvester dialogue. That's to harvest the leads from your database. "Oh, by the way, Mr. Jones, if you know anyone thinking of buying or selling their home who would appreciate the level of service I provide, please call me with their details, and I promise to look after anybody you refer to me." You need to learn that dialogue off by heart and use it over and over. It's the repetition that works, so that he has the "oh, by the way" experience when he hears Mrs. Edwards is thinking of selling a home. Okay, now think of our little scenario. I want to ask you a question. Mr. Jones now has a referral for us. What do we want Mr. Jones to do? What do we want him to do now? Because there's actually 2 different things we want him to do now. And I'm sure you probably instinctively said one of them, and hopefully I can get your attention to look at both of these. The first thing we want Mr. Jones to do is this. For a referral to be any good at all, Mr. Jones must tell you that Mrs. Edwards is thinking of selling. The last thing we want Mr. Jones to do is to have a stack of your business cards and give your business card to Mrs. Edwards and say, "Hey, Steve Johnstone's really good. You can trust him. Give him a call." Because you don't know that that's happening. And if Mr. Jones gives your business card or sends your contact details via text message to 100 people, out of 100, how many people do you think are actually going to phone you? Well, it would be the vast minority. If you are given 100 people's details by various advocates, how many of those 100 are you going to phone? That's right, you're going to phone all 100, aren't you? So we want Mr. Jones to phone us and tell us that Mrs. Edwards is thinking of selling a home and to give us Mrs. Edwards' details. Right, how do we educate? Because what we're doing here is we're talking about how to educate your advocates how to refer you. You are teaching them. Once they've got this message, you're not going to have to teach them repeatedly. Once they get it, they get it. But you're going to have to do this with every advocate until they've got it. the first thing we want to do is teach them to call us with the details. This is achieved through repeated use of the harvester dialogue with your advocates. Understand this, the most common mistake made by salespeople is not asking for referrals. So I'd like to ask you this, how often do you ask for referrals from people? If you're not doing it regularly and as part of your business practice, you're missing out. So we need to find a way that enables you to ask for referrals without feeling cringy. It's got to be comfortable, and it's got to be something that you can do over and over and over again. I learned this straight from Brian Buffini. He's been teaching this for many years. We've learned the best method ever from the old detective Columbo. What did Columbo used to do? Well, he was investigating someone for a ghastly crime. He would go into their house and he would act like a total idiot. And he would be bumbling around and he'd be asking the most arbitrary questions, saying, hey, you know, how long have you lived here? It's a wonderful home. I love these curtains. I love what you've done with the place. And, oh, well, you know, if there's anything else we need, we'll give you a call. And the murderer is thinking, man, this guy's a total idiot. You know, he's never going to catch me. Here's the question. Why did Columbo act like an idiot and not get directly to the point when he went to go and investigate someone? Because he had a little method that it's almost, I had a friend who was a Kirby vacuum cleaner salesman, and there was a certain close they used to do called the brass knob close. And that was, you're very low key, and then you're about to leave, and your hand hits the brass knob of the front door to leave, and then it's, oh, by the way. And this is what Columbo used to do. He would get to the front door and go, oh, by the way, do you drive a blue Chevy? You know, yeah, he was in there. You knew when Columbus said, oh, by the way, the guy was going straight to jail. Well, we're going to use the same kind of method. When we have personal contact, the phone calls and the pop-bys with our advocates, every month and every day, in fact, you're going to have a certain discipline of X number of phone calls that you're going to do. Every week, you're going to do X number of face-to-face visits to your advocates. On those pieces of personal contact, as often as you possibly can, you need to be doing this thing right at the end. You keep the conversation casual, relational. Just before you leave or just before you put the phone down, you're going to say, oh, by the way, Mr. Jones, if you know anyone thinking of buying or selling their home who would appreciate the level of service I provide, please call me with their details. There it is. Please call me with their details, and I promise to look after anybody you refer to me. Okay, so that right there, I'm going to move on now, but I just want to flag that. That is probably the most important dialogue and one of the most important and powerful techniques that I'm going to teach you in this whole referral mastery series, is that, oh, by the way, harvester dialogue. You know, God forbid that it should happen, but if you don't implement anything else I teach you, if you just start doing that in every personal conversation you have with people, just before you go, oh, by the way, and people will start recognizing it. And that's fine if they do. In fact, we want them to. We're not ashamed of the fact that we work by referral and we ask for referrals. If this is all you do, your business will explode as people start to get the message. Yes, okay, I must refer Stephen, I must refer Stephen. Of course, the rest of our system just brings that to life with the value items and the handwritten notes and the client parties and all the stuff I'm teaching you. So that's the first thing. We've got to educate them to call us. The second thing we've got to do is, for a referral to be any good at all, you must make sure that your advocate has spoken to the person about you. So in our example, Mrs. Edwards must be expecting your call. This can be achieved using the lead warmer dialogue with your advocates. Before I show you the lead warmer dialogue, do I need to explain the importance of this? If Mr. Jones calls me and he says, oh, Stephen, I was playing tennis with Mrs. Edwards on Tuesday evening. She said she's thinking of selling her home. I know you're always asking for referrals. Here are her contact details. Give her a call. If I phone Mrs. Edwards and she's never heard of me, that is only a little bit better than a cold call. I never want to get on a call where I'm now on the back foot, saying, your friend Mr. Jones, he said he was playing tennis with you. You know Mr. Jones? Yes, he called me. I'm the real estate agent that helped him with his transaction. Now, you're trying to sell yourself to Mrs. Edwards. You want her to have heard nice things about you before you phone, so that the red carpet is already rolled out for you when she answers the phone. How do we do that? We're going to use the lead warmer dialogue. This is just common sense. This is not something you're going to have to memorize word for word, but it works. It's dead simple. So, Mr. Jones calls me. He says, I've got a referral for you for Mrs. Edwards. Here's what I'm going to say. Mr. Jones, thank you so much for the referral. I really do appreciate it. Could I ask you to do me a favor? Let him say yes. Could I ask you to do me a favor, please? Sure, Stephen. It makes my job a lot easier if Mrs. Edwards is expecting my call. Would you mind letting her know that I'll be in touch? And you don't have to explain that to Mr. Jones. People understand this. It's like, oh yes, of course, no problem. I'll let her know. And if you feel like it might not even happen quickly, you may even say to Mr. Jones, okay, wonderful. So I won't call Mrs. Edwards until 6 o'clock this evening. Will that be enough time for you to chat to her? You can even give him a little deadline in a nice way. Okay, so that's teaching people how to refer you. We're going to get on to rewarding people for referring you just now, but I just want you to update your apple tree diagram. The first thing that we're going to add is the two dialogues that I've taught you. The first one is the harvester dialogue. That is the dialogue we're using repeatedly with our advocates. Every time we have personal contact with these people, we use it with them, and we use it with the same people over and over again. Oh, by the way, Mr. Jones, if you know anyone thinking of buying or selling their home and appreciate the level of service I provide, please call me with their details, and I promise to look after anybody you refer to me. That's the harvester. The next one we looked at was the lead warmer dialogue. We get a referral, we immediately say, thank you so much for the referral, Mr. Jones, I really do appreciate it. Could I ask you to do me a favor, please? It makes my job a lot easier if Mrs. Edwards is expecting my call. Would you mind giving her a call and letting her know that I'll be in touch? Okay, so those are the two dialogues. Now we're going to move on to the second aspect of responding to referrals. You have to reward people for referring you. You've got to reward Mr. Jones now. In our case, Mr. Jones has referred us to Mrs. Edwards. Now, how do we reward Mr. Jones? I'm going to strongly suggest to you, I'm not going to go into why, just trust me on this, do not pay him cash incentives. Unless it's another agent or some kind of other business owner where there's a clear business-to-business relationship, and even then it's got to be legal what you're doing. Check the laws of your country. In South Africa, you're not actually allowed to do that because the person has to have what we call a fidelity fund certificate. They basically got to have a real estate license if they get paid a commission on a real estate transaction. So just be careful about that. But I think there's many other reasons why we should not be paying cash incentives to the people that send us referrals, and that'll come out as I teach through this now. The first principle is that when you receive a referral from a client, you must reward them immediately. Reward them immediately. Do not wait to close the deal first. Now, why do you think I say that? What would your answer be to that question? So Mr. Jones sends me the referral immediately that day before the sun goes down. He gets a little reward from me. I'll get into what we used just now, but he's going to get a reward from me. Why do I not wait before I contact Mrs. Edwards? She gives me a listing, we market the property, we get an offer, it's accepted. Okay, we've got a closed transaction, I'm going to make money now. Now I reward Mr. Jones. Why do we not wait for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months? Always remember that you are rewarding loyalty, not transactional success. This is so important. Why? Because what gets rewarded gets repeated. We are rewarding Mr. Jones's loyalty to us. That's what we value. Whether we close the transaction or not is completely irrelevant. I want Mr. Jones to know I value your loyalty to me, and I want to reward it. You do that with all your advocates. They will repeatedly refer you all the time. Some will close, some won't. Who cares? It's the loyalty that's important. Okay, how do you reward people? Well, I'm going to suggest that you use gift vouchers or gift cards. Why? Well, they're good to use because you can mail them or post them, as we would say in South Africa. you can put them in the mail. You don't want to use flowers or boxes of golf balls or anything like that as your referral rewards. Why? Because you don't want to go into the golf ball delivery business. You don't want to go into the flower delivery business. You know, if you're getting lots of referrals, there's got to be an easy system. You're going to be writing handwritten notes every day in this system. Once you start implementing the program as a holistic system, handwritten notes are a fundamental part of my system. And so you need something you can just stick into a handwritten note. Dear Mr. Jones, thank you so much for the referral to Mrs. Edwards. So much appreciate your support. Here's a small gift as a way just to say thank you. Enjoy it. Stephen. Boom, it goes in the envelope and it gets mailed. Now, what can you put in an envelope? Well, you can put pressed flowers, or you can use a gift voucher or a gift card. That's why I recommend you use these. And people love getting a little gift voucher or a gift card in the mail. Okay, so back to the apple tree. The next line we're going to put in there is on the written communication side of things, on the left-hand side of the apple tree, and you are going to put in number 5, referral rewards. That's the next kind of written communication that we're going to use. And I hope as you look at the apple tree, you get a sense of kind of satisfaction that we've really made good progress. We are really starting to flesh out a lot of the system already. There's a couple of more written communication tools. Then we're going to look at the personal contact systems, phone calls, pop-bys, etc. And then we're done. So I hope that this apple tree diagram is motivating you. There's one last thing I want to talk about before we close today, and that is providing referral feedback. This is an important point. Always keep your advocates updated about the progress of their referrals. Keep them updated. So on some kind of regular basis, you can use your common sense as to how often you need to do this. You need to send Mr. Jones feedback with what is happening with Mrs. Edwards. So maybe it's a little text message. Dear Mr. Jones, just wanted to let you know I met with Mrs. Edwards this afternoon and it looks like she's going to list her home, or it looks like she's not quite ready. She's told me to call her in 6 months' time, or whatever it is. You need to give that feedback. Now, why do you need to do that? Well, for many reasons, and you probably won't have thought of a couple of these reasons, and these will motivate you to do so. And I'm going to give you 5 reasons. Number 1, it's just good manners. I mean, Mr. Jones has shown confidence in me by referring his friend to me. If he just never hears back from me, it's just bad manners. And we don't want to portray that to our advocates. We want these people to know, like, and trust us. Secondly, it will increase the likelihood of their speaking to the prospect about you again. When I let Mr. Jones know this is what's happening with Mrs. Edwards, they're going to play tennis on Tuesday evening again, and then Mr. Jones is going to say, oh, I chatted to Stephen, he did say that you are going to wait 6 months to sell your home. Is that right? You can trust Stephen, he's a good guy. In that conversation, they're going to talk about you. You want to be the topic of discussion. This will cause that to happen. Thirdly, it reminds your advocate how much you value his or her referrals. When I give Mr. Jones feedback, he's getting the idea, man, Stephen is serious about this. He really did value that referral and he's on it, he's going for it. And so he's more likely to refer you again in the future because he knows that you take it seriously. That then relates to the 4th one. It settles your advocate's mind about what kind of service you will give to those whom they refer to you in the future. If I give Mr. Jones good, clean, professional feedback on what's happening with Mrs. Edwards, he knows if he then refers me to another friend of his, that friend is going to get the same level of service that I'm giving Mrs. Edwards. So it gives him confidence to refer me. Whereas if you just go radio silent, he's not going to be confident to refer you again. And then lastly, the 5th one, it provides fresh new touch points for conversations which could lead to new referrals. Personal contact generates activity. It is simply unavoidable. So for this one to work, it's got to be a phone call, not a text message. Hopefully you have got the idea strongly in your mind so far that we are working with a combination of touch types, a cycle of communication with your advocates. You're going to send an item of value every month. You're going to follow that up with some kind of personal contact, and then you're going to follow that up with a handwritten note. We are looking for opportunities to have personal contact with our advocates, because every time you get on the phone or you see an advocate face to face, the conversation goes. And it's on those conversations that you hear of opportunities. I guarantee you this will happen to you. You phone Mr. Jones to give him feedback on Mrs. Edwards, and Mr. Jones says, oh yes, a guy that I sit next to at work said to me he's looking for an investment property. Do you think you could help him? That's what happens when we have personal contact with people. It just bubbles to the surface. Opportunities bubble to the surface. Okay, so let's finish with our steps toward mastery. You're going to have quite a bit of homework I'm going to give you for the next 2 weeks, because you need to seal some of these disciplines into your business quickly. The first one is, I want you to role play the harvester dialogue 10 times per day for the next 2 weeks. Oh, by the way, Mr. Jones, if you know anyone thinking of buying or selling their home who would appreciate the level of service I provide, please call me with their details, and I promise to look after anybody you refer to me. Oh, by the way, Mr. Jones, if you know anyone thinking of buying or selling their home, do it 10 times a day. Learn that dialogue off by heart, as you can hear that I know it. Second one, call 3 advocates per day and use the harvester dialogue. You have already sent your first batch of items of value. I haven't yet taught you on the cycle of how phone calls work and how often you phone people. I know we're going to get to that still, but you are ready to start making phone calls. People have already got your letters, your items of value in the mail, and hopefully you've sent out your first newsletter as well. You can start making phone calls. So for the next 2 weeks, make 3 calls a day to advocates. Hey, did you get the little value item, the little item I sent you in the mail? Have a little chit chat and challenge yourself. I dare you, at the end of every phone call, use the harvest dialogue. Oh, by the way, Mary, if you know anyone thinking of buying or selling a home, do it. 3 a day for the next 2 weeks. And then thirdly, get yourself a stack of vouchers or gift cards to use as referral rewards. I remember I went down to a car wash company and I bought a whole stack of car wash vouchers, and that's what I would use as my referral rewards. Works exceptionally well. You can use coffee shop vouchers. You can even negotiate with a local coffee shop to give you a stack of vouchers that you only pay for if your advocate redeems the voucher, which like 10% of them do. So it's a great way to get free vouchers. But use whatever you want. I recommend something you can put in a handwritten note. And then the last one is to send referral rewards for every referral you receive and those you have received over the last 4 weeks. Because if you've been implementing the system as I've been teaching it to you, guaranteed you've received a referral by now with all the phone calls you've been making. And what I want you to do is, if you didn't reward those in the last 4 weeks, if you did receive one, it's not too late. Send a reward for that referral, and then obviously any that you do receive in the next 2 weeks as well. So that's it for the next 2 weeks. I trust it'll be a huge blessing to you and all your advocates. God bless you. And I'll see you in our next session. We're going to be looking at scripts, dialogues, and role playing. Obviously, we did touch on that a little bit today with role playing the harvester dialogue, but I'm going to address that topic squarely and actually talk about why this is such an important practice in real estate. Well, I look forward to seeing you then and doing that with you.